add is that I wouldn't be just talking to you today as a counselor. I'm also talking to you as a young Vietnamese coming from my generation. And so a lot of my work now revolves around educational setting and private settings where I see teenagers, young adults like myself, even people who go up to their 30s. And there's a lot of different types of issues that I can counter, but a recurring theme, especially working with Vietnamese, is the gap in understanding their parents. And so in every society, in every generation, there will be a period where growing up where you don't understand your parents. As every teenager, you're not really a teenager. Not at one point you go, my parents don't understand me. But it's a very pervasive, it's a very recurring theme in Vietnam. And so that's one of the reasons I went out to study psychology to begin with. And I would like to share with you my journey, things I've found along the way, and a new perspective on the current generational gap. But first, a bit of background information. So, technical definition of one generation, it spans for around 30 years. So, in 2 generations, in 60 years, Vietnam have experienced horrendous war, a post-war welfare state, economic revival, and now we're a booming, developing country. So put things in perspective. I'm going to use just one statistic to show you how big the gap is. Maternal morality. Maternal morality is how likely you are as a mother to die when you have a child for every 1,000 births. So from 1990 to 2016, the maternal morality rate drops from 233 down to 58. So less than 20 years ago, you were 4 times more likely to die through having a child. To put this in perspective, let's take more developed, more stable country. Let's go for the US. The last time the US has maternal mortality rate comparable to ours was 1944, the middle of World War II, 75 years ago. So that speaks to the rapid development of what Vietnam is going through. And it's not just material healthcare, we changed our mindset as well. We went from a very traditional mindset to slowly embracing a more global, diverse mindset. And so why is this important? Our beliefs and our perspective are formed based on ourselves and to our immediate environment. We form our perspective and beliefs about the world for functional reason. We form our beliefs to have meaningful, effective interactions with the world. Our beliefs have got to be able to help us to solve problems. The biggest issue here is that in 2 generations, as a Vietnamese, we have completely different set of problems. So in more stable societies, the transition of beliefs and progress would normally be more gradual and be more slow. And so every generation will sort of have time, a small buffer, to integrate the belief and perspective of the predecessor, the people who come before, the people who come after. In Vietnam, we went war, poverty, welfare state, to my problem is there really isn't much. What nice restaurant do I go eat to this weekend? That's just me. And with that big a gap, it's very difficult to find a common ground, sort of build empathy and build understanding. So for me as a kid growing up, I have very normal concerns, growing up as a kid. It's how do I do well in school? How to make my parents happy? A bit older, how do I find a girlfriend? What career would be meaningful to me? My mom is a neurologist, was the head of the big general hospital in Vietnam. My dad was a war veteran who was in the Vietnam War, and he ended up working for the government. So their concern was that I do well in school, build a solid foundation, educational, secure a good future. Well, at that point in my life, I didn't really even think about that. I thought about what kind of job was meaningful and follow my passion and all that. And honestly, back then, I didn't even think about how much I get paid for it. That's where I was. And So look at me and my parents, like the big gap. It's very natural to assume that we would not have the same set of problems. But growing up, I didn't really understand that. From a perspective of a child growing up, you kind of just see things from your own lens, through your own perspective. And most of the time, I felt that we're just missing each other somehow. My goals weren't their goals, my priorities weren't their priorities. And so that curiosity was sort of what drove me to study psychology. So, a couple of fun examples I had when I was a kid. When I was 13, I really wanted to learn like card magic, And I've asked my parents to buy cards. I practiced really hard, but they would look at like me engaging in a harmless hobby as like I might possibly want to have a career as like a dealer or go work in a casino or just become a gambling addict. It's really intense, really intense. And when I was 15, I wanted to make some money, test out my entrepreneurial spirit. So I saved some money and buy sneakers outside of school and go sell them to my friends in school. And my parents also got extremely upset about it. They said I'm going to get cheated out of my money somehow or I get into trouble in school. Every time that happened, we'd get into a super intense argument. They're wondering, why am I wasting my time doing all of these things that don't have a goal, it doesn't lead anywhere. And me, I was thinking, as a teenager growing up, I want to try a new thing, explore new things. It's test out what I can do. And so why does everything have to lead somewhere? Why does everything need to have a definite purpose? At some point, I didn't really understand why my parents' conception of a good life was just so narrow. And eventually, that's what led me to go and study psychology. I got a bachelor, I got a master's in counseling. And one of the most basic, the first thing that you learn as a counselor is how to get into someone else's perspective. For example, I'm short-sighted, so I kind of need glasses to see clearly. And it got to match my prescription for it to work on me. Obvious. It's also obvious that my pair of glasses probably won't help someone else. There are very few people that would match my prescription. So perspective also kind of like that. It's personal. It begins to develop based on your personal differences. Another example. So for every member in the audience right now, would a cup of water make you happy? No? Happy? Really? Wow, okay, see, not much. So happy is a bit much. It might be a little bit nice. A bar of gold? Bar of gold, everybody? Everybody? Yep, exactly. So, now imagine, you're stuck in the desert for 2 days. You found no water and no way out. Who would be happy with a glass of water? Yeah. Bar of gold? Right? A bit different now, isn't it? So again, perspective will form from your baseline. Certain things are either take for granted or needed or a luxury. It depends on the condition that you're in. Another thing about perspective is that we take it very seriously. For each of us, our beliefs are sacred. If someone say that your belief about something fundamental is wrong, they're not just saying you're wrong. They're just saying your life is wrong. Because your belief determines your actions. If I say your belief is wrong, it's every decision you've made, everything you've done, everything you prioritize is wrong. And so what happens in a normal argument when people's perspectives don't match is, instead of when it doesn't match, you ask, why is your perspective, why are your beliefs different from mine? We normally go, you're wrong. So if you are talking to someone, trying to explain something really important, and they tell you, you know what, I don't think that's right. Here's why you have to look at the situation instead. How'd that make you feel? Probably not too great. And then after that, would you even want to listen to what they have to say? That's the problem with what went wrong with me and my parents, that we were both just trying to push our beliefs and our definition of what we're trying to do, without ever really considering why it was different to begin with. But if you don't make an effort to understand people, most people won't make an effort to understand you either. And so I learned this and I applied it to like my training, my work, with my clients, but for some reason, for a really long time, I didn't really think to apply those tools to the closest relationships around me. So I don't try. And it went on like that for a really long time. And up until I went back to Vietnam like last year, I was supposed to come back for a short holiday. And I was going to apply for a PhD, continue my studies in the UK. But after a while staying in Vietnam, I started to see that there's something I can do. I would like to see if I can work here, if I can make an impact, if I can do something of meaning. And I brought that up to my parents, and they were completely against it. Because, well, if you know anything about the state of psychology in Vietnam, a counselor technically doesn't even have a job code. We're not yet recognized as a profession. So the parents like, what are you going to do? Are you going to find a job? Are you going to make money? And I was like, they were like, do you have a plan? I'm like, not really. I just kind of want to try. So the arguments go back and forth. You know, my parents was looking at like, oh, stability, safety, financial future. I was looking at it's a chance for me to find meaning and fulfillment. And it went back and forth like that for like honestly a month. It was exhausting. At one point, I was just so frustrated, I just broke down crying. Fighting was just too tough and was not getting anywhere. And I asked them, it's like, why don't you understand? It's a very genuine question, very soft-spoken. Why don't you understand? They didn't answer. Things went quiet for a bit. But the tone of the conversation changed after that. And then they started telling me the story. And this story I've heard probably hundreds of times before. I've heard it hundreds of times before. But that day, I genuinely listened. My mom was orphaned at 9. She lost both her parents to the Vietnam War. She's the first person in her village to make it to a university, let alone med school. My dad joined the army when he was 18, did not see his parents, did not know his parents until he was a man, way after that. He came out of it with 5 bullet wounds, so close to death, on so many different occasions. And after he went back, he made the wise decision to get back into education, get himself a stable, secure career. At that point, something changed. Like I dropped my belief that they were trying to get in my way and they were deliberately trying to not understand me. I started seeing things a bit clearer from their perspective. You know, I wanted fulfillment, like meaning, and following my passion, but looking at their life growing up, they probably can't even conceptualize that. You know, I want to do something to give me a meaningful future, but at some point in their life, they weren't even guaranteed to make it to another day. Like, there was luxury beyond luxury. And so they wanted to safe and stable and security because their life was lack and suffering and chaos. At that point, after that, we don't really fight that much anymore. And instead of seeing things as a generational gap as something inherently negative, my perspective changed. Our journey became similar to me. We may want different things, we may strive for different goals, but the core fundamental thing is that we all start somewhere. Good or bad, with the cards we're dealt. We're trying our best with what we got to make things better. First for us, and then those who came after. So there's a lot of things that I do now that my parents still don't understand. But in sort of laying our perspective on the table, we see that our journey together as human beings have the same trajectory, have the same goal. We're all trying to move forward. They may not understand the things I value yet, but they know what it means to me. and they like to cheer me on along the way. So, I stopped seeing generational gap as a gap. I see it now as a collaborative project. Everything that was once a luxury to a generation that came before becomes taken for granted by the generation that comes after. Like now, if you're like someone who's my age, I consider Wi-Fi utility. I consider Wi-Fi like water or electricity. Without it, I'll lose my mind. 20 years ago, no. So, in very much the same thing. And I stopped seeing the gap as them not trying to understand. I start seeing the gap in terms of what I've mentioned before. Every generation had that problem. I cannot relate to any of my parents' problem because they did such a good job in solving all the problems that their generation have. We're allowed to have a completely different set of problems. And that's a tremendous privilege. So, I'd like to propose a different story. For the generation that came before me, know that everything that you don't understand of us now, everything that we're trying for, everything that we're looking for, we're only able to see it standing on the shoulders of what you created. And you might not understand, but know that because of you, we get to travel to a place you cannot imagine. And for people of my generation, we are allowed to see things and want things now because the ceiling that was once what our parents created is now the ground that we stand on. So I no longer expect my parents to understand, and they shouldn't be. The thing that my parents were striving for in their time, like stable security, all of that, they did it. They've done their job. The things that I want for, the things I want to create for myself, collectively, my generation, we haven't got there yet. We can expect to understand that we're on our own journey. We can't expect them to understand where it is that we're going. That's our job. And so if we do our job well, you know what, maybe we get to give the next generation, our children, our grandchildren, a whole new set of problems as well. I very much love that my grandchildren won't understand some of the things that I think are problematic now. I like that story a lot better. And that's why I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much.